Okay, I've put this review off a bit too long for the amount of times I've alluded to it. I think you've been following my videos. You've seen my attitude about this book go from enjoying it, marveling at some of the choices, reveling in the prose, to a little dreary, a little annoyed, and then finally freaking insulted. It's time for the review on Perdido Street Station. This is by China Mieville. It is a weird fantasy book. It's sort of steampunk, it's sort of magical, it's sort of a knockoff of New York City, except with all the crime cranked up to 1,000 degrees, with no concept of how it interplays with the most absurd criminal justice system you can imagine. And about halfway through the book, it becomes very obvious that there is not one idea this author had that he did not put in the book. It's over 700 pages and is now a fantastic example why I far prefer shorter books. There are things that a good author can do with a long book. But honestly, a good author can write 2 short books instead. I'll throw that complaint against The Count of Monte Cristo by Dumas, one of the best books ever written in the English language, part of the canon. Halfway through, 2/3 through, the Rome saga, oh my god, it's terrible. Fight me. The middle of that book is simply terrible. But, staying on topic. What did I like about Perdido Street Station? I liked the reason I picked the book up. I was told that it pushes the prose vocabulary, the descriptions a lot. It really indulges the language. And I'll give it that. You know, I enjoyed that. This is one of the few books where I had to check some definitions of words, and I did end up coming to the opinion that he was probably just sitting with a thesaurus looking up obscure words to sound better, because I don't think that's actually his working vocabulary. But there's this. The reason I don't read books of poetry is not because I think poetry is bad. Good poetry is actually very good. The thing is that you can't sit through and digest the entire book in one sitting, typically. And you need a reason to come back and read more. It's also like short story anthologies. If they're not really linked together, you find yourself asking, well, why do I continue? You know, what did I gain an investment in this anthology from this short story that's going to apply to the next one? And I struggle to finish anthologies because I just kind of get drawn to, oh, what's this other thing I could be reading, though? However, you get me in a good, big book, and I'm sucked in. I'm stuck to it. I will consume it ravenously if it's good. And this ended up not being good, in my opinion, because I ended up not liking the characters very much. And I very much ended up not liking the author. That is something that really comes through in a lot of books. You can tell when they have very immature opinions on things that they're putting in, and when I say immature, I mean undeveloped, not critically analyzed, things that they just feel at their gut level, perhaps, but they don't really understand. And I think the criminal justice in New Krobzon really highlights it well, that it just makes no sense. This is a city that makes Sharia law look merciful, because the only interactions that people have with the police are getting black-bagged and abducted by the militia, and either killed, or if they're lucky, they are turned into what's called a remade, which I do enjoy the magic. One of the magic things in this, because, like I said, every idea that popped into this guy's head is crammed into this story. One of the magic systems is biothaumaturgy or something like that, the ability to reshape bodies. And it's used to inflict these horrific, humiliating, debilitating body restructurings on the most flippant of crimes, get these permanent injuries inflicted on them to humiliate them forever, impoverish them, make them unemployable. Or, they're sold to high-end bidders to be kinky prostitutes or something. Or they're refashioned into tailor-made soldiers or something with guns built into their bodies. And they have no say in the matter, and they can't back out, because what else are they going to do with guns for hands? And yet somehow people still commit crime in this city? There really genuinely is a point where when the punishment for crime is so obscenely high, it's so disproportionate to what was committed, that it does actually stop people from committing the crime. Look at North Korea. Look at, short of the people starving in North Korea, I assume, but even then, when you have committed treason against best emperor, whatever, Kim Jong, I don't know which Kim it is right now, you and your entire family to three separations will be executed. You don't get much crime under those circumstances. When people are constantly going to be exposed to these freak shows made by the militia, they're not going to be committing crime, and yet I'm supposed to believe that this is just a crime-ridden filth hole. The author's apparent opinion that they just buy in on ACAB, the seething hatred this person apparently has for the police, at least as represented in this book. I'm not going to go dig up interviews and Wikipedia articles. I'm not investigating this person. I'm not reading more by them. They don't understand justice and relative morality, and they can't differentiate, they don't realize what standard plot beats and so on do with interaction to statements about justice. And I'm going to give away the ending right now, because I do that when I say don't buy this book. One of the recurring questions is, why is Yag, who is a birdman, who had his wings cut off, and he shows up to the main character, Grim Nebulon, who is like this underground mad scientist inventor, very, very steampunk, and says, "Get me back in the sky. I had my wings cut off as punishment, but that is the punishment of my people, not of your people. Don't judge me. I just want to fly. I'm paying you well." And then goes on to be like a huge hero. He saves Grim Nebulon like multiple times, and other people, and like thousands of people's lives through the course of the plot of the book. And in the climax, in order to protect the machinery that they have to make, and I'll come back to the plot later, but I need to get this off my chest. In order to succeed in the plot, which is killing these monsters that got loose because of them, they have to sit there and protect this machine that the scientist makes, as the militia are attacking them. And all the surviving main characters at that point just pull out guns, even though they're flintlocks. But apparently these are like the easiest to reload 50 caliber pistols that you could imagine. And they just start killing the militia. No questions, no negotiations, no real attempt to get them to back off, to surrender, to explain what they're doing, to get their help or anything like that. Oh, the militia shows up, kill them all. Bang, 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 bang. They kill dozens. They're just saturated in innocent blood in this vein, but it's not innocent because it's the militia, and they're in these masks, and they're part of the machine. And so apparently that's just not an issue. Oh, but wait, it gets worse. They actually kidnap and abduct an old man and torture him to death. Oh, but it's for the greater good. Okay, it's a little dark. I can get behind a story like that if I liked the characters better, if I thought that the book was paced well, which it's not. That's really not the end of the story for whether or not I enjoy the story. But after all that, after 700 pages of dealing with this crap, of all the Birdman wants is to fly. And all the effort he goes, all the danger he puts himself into, all the heroics he does, all the people he saves. Oh, at the very end, his victim shows up and says, "Don't undo our justice. He forced himself on me." Oh, done and dusted. That can't be forgiven. The fact that we're covered in dozens and dozens of dead bodies and blood, and we're the ones that caused all this, oh, doesn't matter. You know, that's unforgivable. And these people clearly have the moral high horse to screw over the guy that saved thousands of people's lives. That's the ending of the book. The entire reason that Yag is in the city comes to nothing. So let me talk about the actual plot and some of the issues with the actual plot. The plot doesn't really start until something like 250 pages, because Grim Nebulin gets asked to start making a flying machine for the Birdman, and he starts investigating like how wings work, what forces, what can he do, what magic is available to him, and he keeps circling the drain on, oh, but I could use crisis energy, which is a very half-baked pseudoscience, very unsatisfying when you think about it. But okay, he's trying to reach above his weight class or whatever, and trying to incorporate scientific theory into magic and still leave it feeling magical. Okay, let's move on from there. So Grim Nebulin puts out like an illegal call for get me all the rare birds, everything that flies, if it's an insect, a bird, a magical species, bring it all to me. I want to study how their wings work so I can do this. I'm bankrolling it, right? And that basically comes to nothing because eventually he has a breakthrough on crisis energy and he starts doing that. But before it comes to nothing, he gets this weird caterpillar. And basically, there's some plot beats I'm skipping over a lot right now. It's 700 pages. I wasted like 3 weeks of my life because I was beta reading it. I was just stuck with this garbage. It turns out that the weird caterpillar is actually a weird moth that's magical and lives like half in the mental dimensions or whatever. The human characters really don't understand how the layers of reality work, and there are some other creatures such as these slake moths that do sort of interact with it, but fundamentally it's a feral creature that eats brains. To put it simply, there are these like super fast regenerating, hypnotic, unkillable giant moth things that eat brains in the middle of the night. And if you look at them, you're hypnotized and killed. So you have to kill them with mirrors, but like just shooting them they're too strong and powerful and magical and uncontrollable, and they're just too much for anyone. And it breaks out. The one that he was accidentally nurturing breaks out, frees the other ones. It turns out that they're making this hallucinogenic drug is because they're actually owned by this crime lord that his girlfriend was working for. And there's this really torture porn plot line of the crime lord abusing his girlfriend, but also making her build a statue. Not satisfying in the least, but like she gets literally pulled out of the plot at about the 1/3 mark and then not seen again until the very end. So to reiterate, there's 5 of these monsters that nobody can deal with them because anyone with a brain can be hypnotized and killed, and they regenerate wounds and they swarm and they can call in for each other, and they're in the night and they're flying. They're just these super monsters, right? So the Rudgutter, the head, who is the head of the militia, is the one that should be in charge of this. He first goes to the demons, which is cool to see this pretty satisfying, actually, interface with hell and how demons can be portrayed and so on. But it's like, I don't know, 3 pages of interaction before he goes, oh, you know what you do to kill magic moth demons? Oh, I got it. Big brain time. Big brain time. To kill the magic sloth demons, I'm going to get a magic spider demon to hunt them, okay? Okay, so I actually kind of liked the Weaver. It is a sort of whimsical spider demon that allegedly is working to beautify the world web, which is like the fabric of society or some reality meaning. It's really not explained because it's not. You're given the perspective of the mortals, not of the Weaver. But in effect, it just means that the Weaver is this giant Deus Ex Machina to like rescue the characters from the militia or to pull them out when their plans go wrong against the Moss. It's literally just pops into Deus Ex Machina them. And it's supposed to be the one to kill the Moss. And it just never succeeds in doing that. Ever. Now, I've mentioned before here and other places that advice on how to write is not easily found on the internet, and you typically don't want to trust advice on how to write because if you actually start double checking any advice you get, you'll like immediately spot contradictions. People don't practice what they preach ever, with one major exception, which is Brandon Sanderson is very upfront with how he structures his stories and why. Now, he's not the best author out there. He writes satisfying stories, though, and he is able to explain what makes them satisfying. And one of the big things that I try to take away from his free lecture series, which if you're an aspiring writer, I highly recommend you watch a couple versions of that, because he uploads his collegiate course, like, almost every year. I think there were some screw-ups with COVID-19. Anyways, I'm getting off track there. One of the things that he brings up is you need to establish and then achieve progress markers in a fight so that it doesn't seem arbitrary. Now, I kind of had this issue with the finale to the Pendergast book that I just did a review on. To kill the monster became an arbitrary, does the author say that the bullet hits the monster? Because it's charging at him down a hall and there's nothing to it. He just needs to shoot and not miss. And we all know that the author has complete control over chaos, and that was my big issue with why that wasn't satisfying. Brandon Sanderson advises things like, you might have one particular enemy that the hero needs to overcome, but you probably want to give him some henchmen, some things that need to be broken, some stages to the fight, and some things for the hero to lose in injury, so that as these things go up and down, you get those emotional reversals and progress, and it doesn't feel like you're just being jerked around. I don't know if anyone other than me watching this has kept up on the Demon Slayer anime. The recent season just wrapped up the other day. I thought it sucked. Animated beautifully. But oh my god, that was like one fight. I guess two if you want to split off the Hashira from Tanjiro's fight. But realistically, it was like one fight for like 9 episodes or something. Where, like, every time that he cuts off its head or gets close to cutting off its head, which is how you kill demons in Demon Slayer, for those that don't know, he does it like 10 times, and then he just gets rug pulled on, oh, but I didn't do it. Oh, I have to go do this. Like 10 times to drag it out. And it truly just started to feel completely arbitrary on, like, is he winning the fight? Like, that's another issue, is, like, Tanjiro will get injured, break his foot, and then just ignore it because, oh, he's just going to breathe better. And there's nothing indicating that things are getting closer to a finale. You're just getting drawn out again and again and again and again and again and again and again. It's like, it was literally worse than Super Saiyan Goku versus Frieza on Namek for the other type of weebs that are probably watching this, where no actual progress is being made. And that huge tangent was because for the 5 Slake Moths that have to be killed in this book over the course of 700 pages, they kill one early-ish, and it's specifically the weak one. Then there's the 4 others, and they go through like multiple attempts to kill these things that achieve nothing. He just keeps introducing different types of magical creatures, having them fight the Slake Moths and dying and accomplishing nothing, because these things just regenerate infinitely. No one ever injures them. No one ever weakens them. They don't scatter them around. They don't accomplish anything You could cut out at least 300 pages from the middle of this book and just like have a footnote of, oh, by the way, 2 days have passed and like 300 people are now dead. Moving on, now they've actually figured out how to accomplish something. It just would have been so obviously better for the moths to be accumulating injuries, for them to be losing one here, one there, getting pissed off. There's a plot line where the moths breed and lay eggs, and it's just like instantaneously the egg clutch is found and burned. Instantaneously. It felt like the next chapter. Except I had to sit through like 3 chapters of explaining how cool this idea was of, oh, but what if there were sentient cactus men that lived in a greenhouse in the city? Bro, I don't care. So the moths just keep shrugging off everything thrown at them for chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter, until at last the scientist goes, oh, but what if I use my crisis engine that was supposed to make Yag fly? But crisis, man, we're in a crisis, aren't we? It summons them, and then they eat themselves to death and die. It was like 1, 2, 3 dead, and then the 4th escapes temporarily to wrap up the plot line with the gangster. And by the way, when the moths are being killed, that is when they are torturing a man to death to do it. And also when they are just executing militia members left, right, and center. Because, by the way, it turns out that these super scary militia men that everyone spends the entire book terrified of, just this amateur scientist and a journalist can just crack shot kill them with freaking flintlock pistols for the entire time. It's like the law of ninjas. You might hear that as a trope, that one ninja alone is unbeatable, but 10,000 ninjas each fall like a blade of grass. The climax needed to be exciting. You gotta have enemies showing. You gotta have shooting and tension and fear and uncertainty and, yeah, just execute people. And that, of course, brings me back to the ending of betraying the one good guy because they wanted moral. After all that murder, after abducting and torturing a man to death, they felt that they could moral grandstand about him forcing himself on a bird. Now, I don't mean that to condone that. It's wrong. But it's just like, really? These are the people to say that? After all that, he gets nothing. Because they do kill the moths. These moths are basically unkillable, and we're feasting on like 100 people a night. And Yag helped kill them. Oh my god. Utilitarianism is usually garbage, but there is a point where you can get some forgiveness. Holy crap. Just immature, slap in the face ending, terrible pacing. I do not recommend Perdido Street Station. Maybe what I've said really clicks with you, but I'm going to point you back to the steampunk video I just released was directly fired up by this book, because one of the main antagonists, helping pseudo sort of characters, hard to say if it's good or bad, is the Construct Council, I think is the name. Because apparently, just put enough logic gates together and you can have a mind, according to this person. He even acknowledges that it doesn't have anything deeper to it, but that claims that it's a model of thinking. And it's just... Alright, I'm tired of ranting at this point. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think of that. I'm going to move on to better books, hopefully. Obviously, the end of the month is coming up, so I'm going to try and figure out how to get live streams working so I can have the discussion on Isaac Asimov's Foundation. Tune in for that. So drop a sub, leave a comment, tell your friends. You know the deal.